And you're live. Hello and welcome to Forever Rugby on Forever Sports. It is a Monday lunchtime show and we begin the last week of build-up ahead of the final Springbok match of the year, which takes place at Twickenham on Saturday. Big match, and no European-based players available, which means that a couple of people have left the squad, a couple of people have replaced the squad. We've got so much to talk about. We had the World Rugby Awards last night with a couple of South Africans finding their way, 3 South Africans finding their way into the dream team of the year, named by World Rugby. We've also got to look at the squad sort of stuff. There's URC coming back this week, so it's another very busy week of rugby. But the show title is RASSIE ERASMUS rather, heading towards a fallout with SA Rugby. And this is about an article that came out yesterday, and I think that there's a lot of tension in South African rugby at the moment, isn't there? And for whatever reason, I think we are heading towards quite a defining few months ahead, because there's also rumors that World Rugby might be initiating a further ban on RASSIE ERASMUS, and that this was just sort of like an immediate, okay, cool, well, we just keep removing from the 2 games, whilst they then look at potentially a longer ban. So, yeah, there's lots and lots to talk about. So strap in, because this is going to be a very busy show. I think it's going to be a very busy week, in fact. So hopefully we will have lots to talk about, and we'll have a couple of very nice shows. How was the weekend, people? How are you guys all feeling? My body's a bit wrecked from playing cricket all day yesterday. It was a very hot day up in Johannesburg, but it was good fun, though. Good fun. So, it's been a long weekend a bit for me, so we're now trying to catch up on a lot of things. Qatar World Cup started last night. We will be launching our coverage of it this afternoon. The evening game, 6 o'clock, and a 9 o'clock game. I really appreciate you guys' support, because we are trying to add football to our sort of umbrella of sports, and if football really takes off, I think it's going to really help transform the entire channel, which will mean a lot of new things for the rugby scene as well. So, the more you guys support sort of across the various things, the better this channel gets, the more support we get, and the bigger sort of projects we can do. That's just a quick little shout out. Hopefully you guys come join me later. But let's start with the RASSIE ERASMUS case, shall we? Now, at the moment, we do know that, RASSIE ERASMUS is currently banned. And he's not going to take part of this weekend's match, for example, where he was involved last week, and he will not be taking part in any match day preparation on the Saturday. So he'll be able to sort of be in amongst the squad now, but he won't be able to. He won't be able to be involved there on the day. And there's a lot of news now talking about that World Rugby is potentially apparently looking at further sanctions on RASSIE ERASMUS, which would probably conclude a potentially longer ban, and put the World Cup in jeopardy. So it becomes quite serious, and it becomes quite significant in terms of what's going to happen. But also the same report that sort of talked about the fact that World Rugby is looking at further sanctions is the fact that apparently SA Rugby themselves are also looking at further sanctions. And, I think that this is all going to sort of reach a bit of a tipping point, and whatever happens, whatever sort of resolution, will hopefully really sort of bury the hatchet with exactly what's going on. And, maybe it's a good thing it's happening now. We still have a bit of time for the World Cup and stuff, but let's sort of break down exactly where the issues are, where the issues could be, whether it's a World Rugby thing, whether it's an SA Rugby thing, whether all the reports that are coming out in this article are justified, because apparently there's a lot of upset SA Rugby people and coaches and stuff like that. And maybe sort of talk about this, are we making a storm in the teacup, or how significant is this, and what will this mean for the game? So this was also coming out yesterday from in sort of the Sunday report, as sort of we come to know. And so the report says that that his suspension is a temporary measure to get him away from matches and out of the media. So I think the fact that he's been banned from media duties is probably a bigger thing than actually being there on the match day. It doesn't really silence him on Twitter, because obviously you can't really. But that's kind of sort of the punishment. Well, if you're going to use Twitter, we're going to ban you from being involved in all this sort of thing. That's what World Rugby's done. Now, there are reports that they are looking at a further sanction. And I think that it'll be interesting to see what they're going to do with that. Because we've seen what punishment. I mean, for example, they banned him from any rugby-related activities for a while, and then they banned him from match activities for a much further ban. At least, that came up to end in sort of September, which is why he's been back on tour this now to the India tour. So those are sort of all the actions they have taken in the past and could take further. However, there is apparently also a lot of tension within SA Rugby. And whilst apparently Mark Alexander said that he's not going to discuss all that kind of stuff with the media stuff, apparently there are rumors that SA Rugby have sort of are very upset with RASSIE ERASMUS, that they are not happy with him, that they're not happy with the whole sort of Twitter thing, and that they considered actually sending him home from the tour. And sort of just saying, well, pull the plug, you're not even going to be involved. You're going to come back here, come face the music. You're going to actually have a very strong conversation with SA Rugby bosses, and they're going to have to then decide what they're going to do with him. And, I think a lot of it's going to be based sort of to rein him in because everybody's sort of worried about how he's tarnishing SA Rugby's image. There was then a whole bunch of things from the unions, apparently. And apparently a lot of the unions are not happy with being sort of guilty by association, and some of the quotes from one of apparently a prominent rugby boss, we don't know who, the article doesn't list it, says, and I quote, "We are sick of it. It has to stop. He has gone too far now. We are so unhappy about this. It is incredibly amateurish and unprofessional." Apparently one of the coaches said, "He is a director of rugby in South Africa. There are other teams other than the Boks that also needs attention. I feel good progress has been made since last year's disastrous start to the United Rugby Championship, but since then things have gone south again in terms of communication with overseas referees." Apparently another coach said, "As director of rugby, RASSIE has a direct influence on the performance of our own referees. He sits in referee meetings," the coach said, "yet there are blatant mistakes every week, not only from the referees, but also from the television referees. Why does it only matter if test referees make mistakes in box matches? That's what makes me angry. How will he feel if he coaches share a video every weekend on Twitter about how bad the referees are? It'll turn into a circus." So, I mean, it's a bit of a weird thing to sit there saying, how dare you criticize the referees because our referees are just a shit. But I think probably sort of saying that they're not making a big deal out of it, so he shouldn't be making a big deal out of it. And I think that it's an interesting time, isn't it? It's a very interesting situation. It's a very unique situation. Now, I do, for example, get that the whole sort of, but he's director of rugby. Why is he sitting there on Twitter and moaning about referees when he could be helping us? He could be assisting us. He needs to be sort of working on South African rugby as a whole. I don't think he's not like he's spending hours and hours on Twitter. He's put out less than 10 tweets in November. They're not always particularly brilliantly worded, so it's not like he's crafting these tweets, and scheduling them, and and the videos, for example, that he's using, he's got readily available. So let's be very frank here. This whole thing of he's spending too much time on Twitter where he should be doing this. What's he spent on Twitter? 2 hours in total? I mean, it's not hard. You've got media guys, stuff like that gives you guys clips. So you can throw that clip on with a caption in 2 minutes. So I understand sort of the concept of, he's spending too much time on Twitter. He's not really spending much time on Twitter. So I don't think that makes much of a difference. It's more sort of the relevance of should he be putting it on Twitter? Should he even be on Twitter? That's kind of more what we need to be worrying about. This whole thing of look at the time he's spending on there and there. I think that's a pretty moot point. But I suppose it looks more like, well, we're not getting attention, and he seems to be more worried about his Twitter than about helping us, which is fair, I suppose. If they're feeling that the South African director of rugby is not directing South African rugby, and he's just giving all his focus to the Boks and leaving everybody else, then you're gonna have a fair gripe. But I think that it's going to be interesting. Do SA Rugby? Because the thing is, SA Rugby got to be smart about this. They've got to play the situation very well. So they've got to do two things. First of all, they've got to step in now before World Rugby step in. Because I think if World Rugby see that SA Rugby are taking ownership of the situation and that they are willing to try and mediate it and try and sort it out, then I think that then prevents World Rugby from having harsher sanctions. Now, some people were saying, I think it was Stephen Jones on Twitter, so Standard, was saying, you need to remove him for the World Cup. The Boks' best chance of winning the Rugby World Cup next year is having RASSIE ERASMUS involved with them and having the current coaching staff being backed, because they're not going to be replaced. You can't replace a coach right now with the Boks system and look to win the World Cup next year. It just can't happen. So regardless of whether you like the Bok coaching staff or not, whether you like RASSIE ERASMUS or not, they are our best chance. You know, you could talk about people like Scott Robertson. I can tell you right now, Scott Robertson comes in. It'd still be a miracle if he then won the World Cup. It's not that easy. You know, we've now been on this 3-4 year journey, also building towards it next year. We can't then just disregard and bin, you know, the last 18 months to 2 years of preparation and go from this week, after this weekend, we next play in June or July even probably, and go from July and put in, you know, a World Cup winning strategy from July and win it in October. It's not going to happen. So the current coaching staff will be there, and they need to be the strongest coaching staff, and that means having RASSIE involved there as well. So I think SA Rugby needs to sort of take ownership of the situation. I think they need to sit there and say to World Rugby, leave the ban. It's like, you've banned them already. Leave it. We'll take care of it. Go and give them assurances, and then after this weekend, bring them back down, have a meeting and say, right, this is where we stand. This is what we have decided. You will work within these parameters. You will not do this. You will not do that. And again, if they are smart about it, you know, they've got to do it in a proactive manner. So they've got to sit there and say, right, RASSIE, can't be doing this Twitter. You know, it's tarnishing the brand. It's not working. It's not the right way to do it. You know, we're all taking flack from it. You're getting banned from it. This is not the way forward. So there needs to be a little, you know, rap on the wrists and basically saying, you're out of line, now sort yourself out. And then there needs to be okay, so we're acknowledging now that there is a refereeing problem. You know, how do we fix it? And SA Rugby then need to actually take ownership of that stage and say, right, you sort yourself out. You go and sort out our rugby structure. You go back to being director of rugby and leave the refereeing issues, for example, the officiating issues to us, and we will sort that out. And then they need to go and actually sort it out. But this is where your governing body has to be strong. It has to be aligned, and it has to be smart. You know, we can't just sort of go and say, oh no, well, we're going to have a talk with him, and then you do have a talk with him or whatever, you fine him or whatever, and you go happy as Larry. You know, we've got to take ownership. We've got to try and achieve what we're trying to achieve in the right way, whilst being shown to be a strong, united force. We cannot have SA Rugby versus RASSIE ERASMUS. We can't have SA Rugby versus RASSIE ERASMUS versus the Union Boss. We've got to be a united front. You know, we've spent the last 4 or 5 years, I think, has been a massive push across South African rugby, and I think we've taken massive steps forward. We've got a URC champions. Our women's side has improved immeasurably within a year of changing its structures. So it's really exciting. It's a really exciting project, our women's side. You know, our sevens program didn't get a particularly good start last week, but you know, won the Commonwealth Games. Bit disappointing in the World Cup, but the sevens program is working, and we're now entering into a new sort of era for the sevens program. So that's going to need a lot of attention. You know, we can't neglect it and let what Neil Powell put in place fall apart. We've got to make sure that's getting. You know, our under 20s are working really well. So I think we've taken massive steps forward as a rugby country. But now, how do we continue doing that in the right ways, in the right boardrooms, in the right manner, for example, where we can affect the real change? Because at the end of the day, RASSIE ERASMUS has gone to Twitter to try and highlight these things because he feels like the current platforms he's using or the platforms available and the current system isn't working. And that's where SA Rugby then needs to take ownership, and they need to say, okay, well, why isn't it working? And how do we make it work? You know, how do we really hit home? How do we change this whilst, you know, keeping up our image, keeping the Springbok brand alive and well, and you know, not tarnishing anything? How do we affect the change? We need to affect the change in the most effective and the best possible ways. And we need our governing body to step up. And, you know, we're going to see Jerry Roux leave, and from the sounds of it, it's about bloody time. So we need really strong leadership at the top. And, you know, that also means working with the provincial unions. So, for example, Art Masati on Twitter, he's also a bit of a nightmare, to be honest. You know, throws around very casual, unthoughtful statements that he doesn't think anything through, and he sort of throws this around. And it is also, I think, damaging the sort of the Sharks brand a little bit because he's a little bit of a loose cannon. So we're not saying, and I'm not saying, you know, we need to, if there's a refereeing issue, we need to just stop doing it. but we've got to find a better way to do it because this is also not going to work at the end of the day. Once again, it's an aggressive approach, but it's not going to work, is it? Because we've got to sit there and say we've got a massive refereeing issue, and World Rugby's response is we back our referees, we're going to ban you. And you don't want to be sitting there in a shootout with us in World Rugby going, well, we're not even going to begin to look at it because you guys are doing it the wrong way. You're dragging us through the dirt. We've got to find we've got to be a bit more tactical about it, I think. So a lot of people are sitting there saying, oh, but nothing's happening, and therefore we have to put it on Twitter and stuff like that. Go and look at social media. Go and speak to the casual fan. It is not going well. We are very much hated at the moment. Some people are like, oh, it's fine. We don't care. Sponsors care. Sponsors care. Partners care. And at the end of the day, you start tarnishing your brand, for example. You start, going into these muddy areas. Brands start pulling out. Partners start pulling out. If union bosses aren't happy, we create a very horrible, muddy environment where our rugby can't thrive. We've got to get back to the main thing being the main thing. So again, I'm not saying that we can't go after the referees if that's an issue, but we've got to find a better way of doing it where we don't have to worry about affecting our brand. We've got this incredible brand as SA Rugby, and we've now moved to the Northern Hemisphere, and I think our unions are going to earn a lot more money, but we've got to be smart about this, people. We can't, we are very much the weird guy at the table, which people are like, we know why you have to be here, but you're no longer now with the Southern Hemisphere sides because you're in the Northern Hemisphere, but you're not in the Six Nations. So we're kind of that weird cousin at the moment, but we're also the weird cousin that brings in ridiculously big audiences. So we're incredibly important to World Rugby. So we need to understand our worth, and we need to understand, and now we need to try and figure out how do we assert ourselves, and how do we make ourselves heard in the right ways and get the right results whilst protecting our brand, So we've got to make sure we've again, and there's no right answers here. For example, we could chat for the next few hours. We probably won't find the right answers because and that's the whole point, isn't it? We're the casual fans. We're the fans that want to watch our rugby succeed. We want to make sure that things are being done right, and we need to back our SA Rugby as the custodians of rugby in the country. Have got to take a responsibility on hand, and they've got to try and sort it out. So there's a lot that needs to happen. I want to go through some of the comments. There's a lot of them coming through, and I think some people are raising some nice points, and always interesting to see where everybody stays. So even saying, I can't believe on Twitter he acknowledged that the ref's family has been threatened but still didn't apologise. Connor saying, Bongi Manami should also be held accountable for his comment towards the referee. You got a warning. Owen Farrell made the same sort of statement. Also had something to say about that. It's not a good look. It's not lacquer. But we need to move to. But I think the fact that it's been highlighted, and I think we're now sort of in this weird sort of month period where referees are under a lot of scrutiny, and players now need to acknowledge that. But I think it's not. I mean, Bongi Manami's not the only one, and Owen Farrell did it literally in the next match. So there was 2 instances, for example. Johnny Sexton has a go at referees all the time as well. So there is a growing trend to criticize referees, and again, my biggest issue is I think that it's far bigger than the referees, because at the end of the day, right now we'll sit there and say, well, who's a good referee? When was the last time you saw a good referee performance? People won't be able to say, oh no, they're all useless, and we can't have the game without referees, and it's lazy to just say they're all useless, because at the end of the day, if every single referee in the youth system is incompetent, well, how do we change that? Why are they all incompetent? Are they incompetent, or all the laws the issue? And I think a lot of it is. I think a lot of the issues is I think we're changing a lot of the laws. We're changing a lot of the ways we officiate. And I think there's so many grey areas that have crept into rugby that is causing all this debate, because this is just very little consistency. And I think there's maybe too much room for interpretation, or maybe the laws are poorly phrased. So I think it's not so easy to just say, we need to get better refs. Because that's not a quick fix. You're not just going to go and, right, well, let's launch a referee academy, go and sign up a bunch of amateur referees, and all of a sudden just production line world-class referees. It's not going to happen like that. So we've got to understand, why are these the issues? What can we do short-term, medium-term, long-term to rectify the issue? Because it's far too easy to just say, but the refs are useless, because there's no solution to that. There is no solution to that. We've got to find solutions. We can't just bitch and moan about how everything's terrible without going, well, how can we change it? And it's boring as well, and it's counterproductive to just throw everything out there and then you sit there saying, okay, cool. And I think World Rugby need to acknowledge that there's a massive issue with the laws and the referees stuff like that. But how do we fix it is the biggest question. We can't just say it's broken. I hate that kind of attitude. Be part of the solution. I'm a very much be part of the solution person. So what needs to change? And a lot needs to change. I do think that a lot of World Rugby needs to change. I've always said that. I think that's very old-fashioned. I think it's very archaic, and I think that we need to see new people involved in World Rugby. We want to see a bit more innovation because I think that the game's in a very precarious position at the moment. The Nick White incident, for example, is incredibly important this weekend and gaining rightfully massive traction because he should never have come on and played again, and that is a huge blow towards the future of the game to see something like it happen. So we've got to really be careful where we are within the sport because if we don't all solve it, the sport's going to collapse. And all of a sudden, we're not going to have rugby union as we know it. And as Springbok fans, that's going to be devastating because this is the one realm, this is the arena from South African sport that we've just won so much, that we have dominated, that we are such a big player in it. We cannot afford to let it collapse. AC saying, if Rassie is banned, so be it. Why does the media want to hype this issue, add more spice to this? SO is also behaving in a toothless manner, absolute storm in a teacup. Well, I don't think it is. I think that's the whole point, isn't it? For example, FIFA, you don't see FIFA banning coaches for a year. So you're looking at the current world champions coach having been banned for almost a year last year. That's not a non-issue. He's heading towards that again. It is definitely an issue. We can't make it seem that it is a not small issue. It is a big issue. I think it's an issue that can be solved quite quickly if the right people are willing to hold their hands up. I think it can be. I think we can dissipate it pretty quickly, but we've got to be smart about it. Amanda says, I tend to agree with Nick Meller's view on Rassie. While there are problems with the referee, I think Rassie is creating an antagonistic atmosphere for SA. Meller's saying, do you have this fallout on good authority, or is it your view? I'm asking it because it seemed up to now that SA Rugby has had his back. As I say, we're talking about about an article that's all coming up yesterday. Kev was saying, bring in the half-time, change the ref policy that when there's more than a certain number of mistakes by a particular ref, that any one of the teams can complain and get the ref changed at half-time. How's that going to help? And if the referee that replaces him is worse, then what? CMC saying, without refs, we don't have a game. Instead of headhunting like children, let's give them a platform they can do better, specifically on those big calls. 100%. A lot of people saying the platform is not functioning, so they're saying what platform can we use? And I think that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? How do we find the right way to do this? Because let's be honest, it's all very well saying, well, the other platforms aren't working, but this isn't working either. It's not. Going on Twitter is not going to work. It's not working. How has anything changed apart from the fact that he's been banned? So, yes, previous platforms didn't work. This is not going to work though. So how do we find the right platform to do it? George says, sorry, I don't agree. They ignored all previous concerns, so there's no other way. Go, Rassie, we don't care about the others prior. They're killing rugby and Springboks. Okay, cool. So we'll just go in this sort of perennial round and round situation. Everybody hates us. We hate them. F World Rugby. And we just create this toxic environment where it just sucks all the joy out of the entire thing, Let's go. You look back at a year ago during like the British National Lions series and Chasing the Sun and stuff like that. And life is good. And you're sitting there going, cool, this is, life's positive. Andrea says, Nike decided to sponsor us even though they know Rassie tweet stuff, sponsor sport winning teams, stand for what's right. Yeah, no. That Nike deal would have been negotiated. Negotiations would have started last year for a start. Then they're not going to sit there saying, yo, we're going to come sign with the Springboks because we know Rassie Erasmus stands up for what's not right. Let's be honest, come on. That deal for a start was announced before he really started getting involved in Twitter. In terms of dropping clips like he has done. Yes, he tweeted things in the past, but it was never this kind of thing. He was never dropping, referee criticism tweets consecutively now after. Again, unprecedented territory. I'm just saying, I firmly think SA Rugby should, Rassie point, what director of rugby SA says, and pretty good mistakes done by officials, that's not too good at all. Our technology, use it fairly. ADC, they ban it from all rugby activities will be terrible and unacceptable. Someone needs to make the stand. Exactly, this needs to change. Kevin says if Rassie wants to ref the refs, let them join the refs panel board. Well, apparently he is in the URC, and that's why some of the bosses are saying, well, why aren't you making a difference here? Most bosses, I'm with SA Rugby. Quiet diplomacy is the right strategy. Just keep quiet. It's only It's only 1 week of international rugby in the block of first grade pool power. Mark Alexander just keep quiet. Francis, my honest opinion is Rassie needs to step aside and let Jacques do his job. No disrespect to Rassie. Duncan saying change the rules, allow people to criticize the rest, problem solved. Yeah, I don't think it's. I mean, why would you be a referee if you're just going to get absolutely hammered every single time? Because let's be honest, we can't just be, we hate the referee, the referees are useless, because I've got a mate that are referees, and if he's going to get abused every single Saturday whilst earning next to no money, why the hell was he going to go to referee? I wouldn't go to referee. Are you mad? Stuff that in a bag of chips. I mean, I watch a lot of rugby and I still struggle to understand the laws. Now I must go officiate and wait for 80,000 people in the stadium baying for blood to then invade my Twitter DMs and tell me to go pop myself and shit. Fuck that. So we can't just create this war on referees either. That's not a solution. Because if we don't have referees, we don't have the game. So as I said, this is why we've got to find this balance. We've got to find how do we make the referees better? How do we find the right platforms to make them better? And along with that comes the changing of the idea of constructive criticism. So let's have a very open and transparent system where coaches can raise issues and then they get feedback on these issues. And referees are getting feedback on these issues. And we're finding more common ground, you know? If it's a roundtable discussion and you go and put a couple of referees around a table with some bosses and some rugby coaches, the head of the Rugby World Cup, and you have these conversations and thrash it all out, maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, but we can't just declare war on referees, because if we don't have any officials, we're not going to have games. So again, that's not a solution. We've got to find how teams, coaches, referees, fans, sponsors, things can all create a good environment where rugby can prosper and be the main thing. Let's go back to rugby being the main thing. The main thing needs to be the main thing. Right now, the main thing is irrelevant. And that's sad. You know, we had a fantastic game of rugby. We could have great games of rugby this weekend. We saw Georgia beating Wales. We saw us hammer Italy. We saw England come back, you know, in 9 minutes and draw against the All Blacks. We saw a very close game between Australia versus Ireland. I didn't watch the French game yesterday, but I saw a really cool a couple of moves from Japan. So the on-field stuff is quite cool. And there's rhetorics out there. Italy beating Australia, Georgia beating Wales. Like, we've got to really... And we're talking about the fact that, you know, Scotland hammering Argentina. Yeah, I mean, Argentina were basically just, you know, walking around with giving themselves red cards. But playing-wise and ability-wise, teams are closer than ever. So we are probably in one of the most exciting eras of the professional rugby game, because we're going into a World Cup where Italy know they can beat Australia, where Georgia know they can beat Wales. Now, how exciting is that? You know, how exciting is that? So I think we're approaching one of the most exciting possible World Cup scenarios, and yet we're talking about referees. You know, we're talking about concussion, which I think is a fantastic thing. I think that's very relevant. I think we need to sort out this concussion issue going into the World Cup, because we've now got an opportunity to get on top of it, and we've got to attack it head on. You know, and I mean, on that concussion thing, there was a horrible, horrible clip during the rounds of Matt Williams dissecting it, and it was horrendous. I mean, you look at that Nick White incident, regardless of how you feel about the guy, he should never have played that match. And the fact that he did is everything that is wrong with concussion protocols at the moment. You know, and if you're somebody that sits there saying rugby's gone soft, you can leave right now, because we cannot. Again, we're talking about how do we get young players to play the game, make it safe. You know, make it safe, make it fair, make it transparent, and that's why a lot of things need to change. You know, World Rugby, for example, have got to take this on head on. They need to be less reactionary, and I'm definitely not on World Rugby's side. Anybody that's watched me for a long time, no, I do not like World Rugby. I've got a lot of things to say about them. You know, ever since that last vote when old Bill got back in, not been happy. But again, also, you can't just declare war on World Rugby and sort of leave things, because again, they are the world governing body, but they've got to change. We've got to change. We've all got to change, unfortunately, people. Change is the new. And as long as the right change, we can take some big steps forward. Duncan saying, change the rules, allow people to... No, I said that already. Pete saying, agree, he should let Jacques do his job. Jacques is maturing in the role. He doesn't need Rassie as much now as in 22. John saying, Steve, just letting you know, you've really stepped up and putting top quality content for your channel. Really happy for you. Thank you so much, John. I really appreciate that. Yeah, we always are trying to improve, so glad to see that people are thinking that we are improving. Dad and Baby saying, I think Rassie and SA Rugby are doing this on purpose to create awareness. World Rugby is already under much more pressure than they ever were before Rassie. Rassie doesn't just do, he does with a plan. Pete saying, World Rugby needs to simplify the game, then refs can be more consistent. They've been complicating it the last few years. Tend to agree. Katela says Sikamoza Noche should have been called up. Yeah, we're going to talk about that. I'm going to move it away from now because we've been talking about this for far too long. I mean, it's been half an hour and this has just been the ref talk. I want to talk about the Springbok squad as well. Douglas saying, fair play, mate. The toxic environment needs to change for the Springboks to succeed. Open and transparent is not World Rugby way, 100%. Green says, how would it be if coaches complain every week and how bad the refs are? Louis saying, World Rugby should push money to referees. World Rugby should also start talking more to lower ranked societies as well. Maybe incentivizing the refs then for doing something right. Radio says that I don't want to see any person ever criticize a player for performance. Again, you know, you're looking at two extremes. We're not saying that we can't be happy with the referee, but if we just decide to declare war on referees and tell them they're all shit, they're going to pack up and leave. And I can tell you right now, if you look at the financial incentives for a player compared to a financial incentive to the referee, not quite the same, is it? Sean says, not to change the laws all the time, it makes things a mess with refs having to learn the new ones. Russia is already changing referee, just by the way. Stephen is trying to get the middle ground. Joan's saying, honestly, I think rugby is heading down a very bad path either way. I understand why no ref equals no rugby, but when things get worse, it turns heads. World Rugby is not open and transparent enough to be diplomatic. 100% agree. Taylor Finder saying, if Rassie didn't do anything, the status quo would remain. I agree, going after the refs is not the solution. The laws and process are the issue. Rassie is really going after World Rugby, not refs per se. Yeah, but again, we've got to make sure we're doing it the right way, so they don't also. Because I mean, again, unfortunately, people are. You got to pay the people. You got to pay the person. No, it's like in poker where you sit there saying you don't play the game, you play the person. You know, so I understand that you can go head on attack against World Rugby, but we know it doesn't work because they're very proud and it's just turn around and say no. You know, so you know maybe got to find a way to sit there and say, listen, you guys are, you know, this is it's more issues, and you know if you guys change this, we're all going to be happy. So it's about finding the right way to do things. Grant saying Matt Williams hasn't got a clue. Yeah, I agree after that bloody statement this weekend. I'm just going to go through a couple of comments here. Meredith saying, Rassie never criticised referees after the test against France, unless I missed something. Yeah, I did. He retweeted moments from the game and said we should learn from these. The narrative was created by fans. He did very much mention a few calls. I mean, he put that Tez and Colby one, for example, that hit up with the leading elbow. So Manash saying, but it's not like they're getting new laws wrong. If Box, with regards to the selection, will be a successful tour looking at preparation for World Cup. Yeah, let's talk about the Box, shall we? Let's talk about the Box. Because yeah, the referees, it's boring, isn't it? Unfolding. So let's talk about the Springboks, shall we? Because there's been a couple of changes to the squad, and the interesting changes to the squad. Some of them I like, some of them I don't like, and I think that we're in for a very interesting team selection, which will be announced tomorrow. So in terms of changes to the squad, 6 players have joined the squad from the SAA side. They are Thomas Toy, Instu Kuntunu, Marco van Staden, Johan Goosen, Grant Williams. Whilst Kanan Moody has gone over and joined them. I don't really understand. I mean, the kid's been injured. He's not played any rugby. Do we really need him there right now this week? It's a very strange decision, that. But let's go through them. Thomas Toy, Instu Kuntunu, no issues whatsoever. Thomas Toy, I reckon, will probably be on the bench this weekend. And I think Intuko, to give him his credit, was one of the few players who I thought actually didn't play too badly for SAA. Marco van Staden, again, you know, is looking a bit better, knows the system. Surprised not Al Ritlo, who is a bit more versatile. But Marco van Staden was always part of sort of the more broad original squad. Grant Williams, no issue, you know, took his chances, looked a lot better across the 2 games. I do feel sorry for Sikamoza Noche. I do feel that he probably played better than Marco van Staden, but again, they've always gone to people who've been part of the setup longer than other people. How Johan Goosen, and once again, I understand again, you know, he's been part of the setup, but how he manages to get into the squad, I have no idea. You know? And yeah, I mean, we had 2 games for SAA, and I thought that Johan Goosen looked pretty nowhere in both of them. So, surprise got in the call up, and I don't understand why we brought in Kanan Moody. And it's not nothing against Kanan Moody, but the kid's not played any rugby. He's coming back from injury. Why did we not let him go play URC this weekend? Why is he coming? Why are we flying him to London? I mean, are they going to start him this weekend? I mean, I'd be very surprised. You got Makazolo Mapimpi waiting in the wings. Because Kane Moody won't be on the bench. That's not. He won't be on the bench. So he's going there either to start or to not play. So if he's not going to start, is the 3 practices he's going to have with the box that important to his, the long-term Springbok concept? I don't know. I find that a very strange decision to make. I think that I would have just left him and let him play for the Bulls. Let him come back properly. But also, so I think apparently Sasha Ngobazulu has obviously returned down to South Africa. He was going to rejoin the South African squad. Apparently he's returned and he's not going to play the URC this weekend. So the players we're missing, by the way, are Vincent Koch, Trevor Nyakane, Jasper Wiese, Kobus Reinach, Cheslin Colby, and Andre Esterhuizen, who all returned to their clubs today, in fact. So, so, I mean, if you look at some of there's not much sort of indication on who we're going to see being named tomorrow. Tomorrow so the team announcement tomorrow is at 2 o'clock. So we will be live for that, obviously. So we'll see you guys then. I'm very interested to see how we're going to, what we're going to go with tomorrow. Because I'll be very surprised if Makazolo Mapimpi doesn't start at 11. Are we really going to keep Curtis Arndt at 11 and bring Kane Moody at 14? Especially given that we know we're in for a hammering under the high ball. So Freddie Stewart is going to be running, and he's a big lad. He's going to be running a lot at our backline. We're going to be putting a lot of bombs in the air. So, I think the fact that they called him Kane Moody, I'd be surprised if he starts, but they might. Because, the logical thing would be when Pimpy comes back and he goes to 11, Curtin Arndt goes to 14, Really starts at 15, Dale goes back to 12, and Jesse Creel starts at 13. The brave selection would be to start Ibaka at 10, and then you're going to make a big call at Damien Willemse or Damien Delendi at 12. By the way, for everybody that keeps calling for Damien Delendi to be dropped, he was actually named in the World Rugby Dream Team. So, I think, and surprising that he did, but he's played well this year. And I think, to be fair, I think a lot of people who want Willemse at 12 just want Willemse at 12. It's not like Damien Delendi is not good enough at 12, therefore we want Willemse. It is just like, we want Willemse to play, but we think he's better at 12. So what do we do? Which is fine, and that's a nice conundrum to be in, isn't it? Where you're sitting there going, well, we've got 2 players who both really start. How do we choose between the 2? Just over say, hey Steve, really enjoying the content, bro. Do you think all this off-field stuff is going to have an impact on the team? Wouldn't look like it following the Italy thumping. I think they're doing very well. I think the team's become quite used to being able to shut out all the off-field noise, because there's been off-field noise since they've been together for 6 years now. It's always been a team under scrutiny. There's always been drama surrounding the team, and I think they've become very accustomed to dealing with it, to be honest. And I'm hoping that they are, because they're going to have to be really. The reason that, for example, that England got a side this weekend is because it's got nothing to do with World Rugby. They've got an agreement with clubs that clubs will release their English players for matches outside the test window. We've also got that agreement, by the way. We've got that agreement with the URC teams, and we managed to get that agreement with the Japanese-based teams. So that's why. But the French teams and the English teams, we don't have the agreement with that, and it's not surprising, really. You've got these top 14 Premiership sides playing these guys, lots and lots of money. It's a bit different. Your governing body comes and says, we will have our players. You kind of go, okay, fine. We suppose we kind of have to, don't we? Same as our URC teams. Our URC teams are technically within their rights to say, bugger you. Sharks could technically say, no. Sir Khaleesi will be back at Kings Park on Monday. Everyone else will be back at Kings Park on Monday. You guys go and deal with it. But we've got an agreement with them. So it's the same thing with the England unions. So that's why England, for example, have a side. Because if they didn't have that agreement, they wouldn't have a side at all. Meredith says, if Moody is fit, he should play. Maybe with the bench from a Pimpy. Damien Delaney can't hit out offload. Green Guard saying it'll be a mistake to start Kane and Moody. Well, we're going to find out tomorrow. I'll be very surprised if he starts, but I mean, it almost kind of feels that he is going to start, because why else would you specifically fly him up? Why would you put a guy on a 12-hour flight for 3 training sessions to not start him? It also, for me, I mean, again, you know, they do try and keep people within the squad, but it speaks volumes of the fact that I don't think too many people really put their hands up for SAA, because it would have been very easy to say, Cornel Hendricks, listen, I need you to come and just cover 14 in case of an injury. You know, ideally we've got our wing sorted, but if anything goes really wrong, can you just be around so that we can just, you know, pop you into the game, and that's a nice immediate fix. But they haven't. They've gone and said, no, we want Caden Moody to fly up here, rejoin the squad, and be available. So maybe he does start, and if he does, it's a hell of a backing for the young kid. And if he doesn't, I'm going to sit there going, well, why the hell did we fly him up there? So, yeah, it's an interesting one. It will be announced tomorrow at 2 o'clock, so we'll have more answers there, and it's going to be a very fun announcement. Because where we've got to find players is within the pack, for example, the front row won't change. We just need a new title off the bench, which will be Thomas Toy, I'm sure. In terms of the loose trio, Jasper drops out. So the question is, does Evan Lewis start or does Kwaka Smith start? Does Franco Master start at 7 or does Franco Master start in the locks? For example, you could go Etzebeth Mostert and then you could go loose trio of Khaleesi, Kwaka, Evan Lewis. What? Or do you start Marvin Ory at 5 with Etzebeth at 4 and then go Khaleesi, Franco Mostert, and then Kwaka Smith at 8, Evan Lewis off the bench? Good question. These are the questions. Does Money Liebach start? And if he starts, do we see Jan Wilson on the bench? Or do we see Mapimpa on the bench because you've got fly-half options and Damien Willemse, who starts at 15, for example? And you have Billy Roo off the bench. Or do you go Willemse at 12, Billy at 15, Damien at 13, and you have... Yeah, you can have Jan Wilson on the bench. You can have a Pimpy on the bench because you've got lots of versatility. I don't know. Scrum House-wise, I think Jaden Henderson obviously comes onto the bench. That's pretty simple. And yeah, I don't think there's too much in the backline that'll change apart from that. So Katrina say Mapimpi hasn't been playing much, hasn't been much gas recently, feeling that he is coming like Rico Awani in 2019. Maybe a shift to 13 could be a good and also solve 13 depth question. I definitely wouldn't see Mapimpi at 13. The experiment of playing Mozzie on flank must stop. How many times are we going to make the selection of playing lock at flank? Well, the last time we did do that, it was with Peter Steph Toy. He did go on to win the World Player of the Year. So I would argue that it did kind of work. And I don't know. I don't understand why people have got an issue with Mostert on the flank. I mean, that guy bossed the original Irish Lions there. He's probably one of our most consistent players this year, and he's played a lot on the flanks. I don't really mind it, to be honest. It sort of more fits into... It's kind of like we've got this game plan, we've got these certain players and certain roles we need to fill, and he fills that role very well. So, yeah. Do we go to the 60 split, for example? Do we see Van Staden... Could you go Van Staden, Dion Free, and Malcolm Marks all off the bench? Just go fetches FC. Again, 6-2 split, 5-3 split. How do you go? I probably think a 6-2 split will be more likely. And you can do that because you've got Damien Willemse and you've got Money Liebach. They can both do 10, 15. Damien can cover 12 as well. Billy can go to the wing. We've actually not seen a Damien can play on the wing as well, which is interesting. But I don't think we're gonna see. What was I gonna say? Who was I gonna say? I don't think we're gonna see. What was I not thinking we're gonna see? I can't remember. Yeah. So we will see it tomorrow, shall we? So we'll be live tomorrow at 2 o'clock for the reaction. The team will come out just before then. Obviously, we'll have a video for that. So as long as you subscribe to the channel and as long as you turn your notifications on, you will be very well informed about everything happening regarding the Springboks. Now, I am asking a big favor of you guys. And I know that you guys are all the rugby mad people. But I know some of you guys do watch other sports. And that's why I'm asking for support. Because I am doing 2 watch-alongs today of the FIFA World Cup in Qatar. Which is very contentious, isn't it? All the whole Qatar issue. But we, as a brand, are trying to sort of move into other sports and stuff like that. And it kind of comes down to the viability of us as a company. We need to have other things going on, and we are trying to be Forever Sports, not just Forever Rugby. So obviously the rugby stuff won't change. We're always going to do this. Why would we stop doing this? And you guys have got a great community. However, in order for us to be able to do even more stuff and to be able to do even cooler stuff, we need to expand as a brand, and that requires other sports, for example. That requires other types of content. So please come and join me later. We will be live at 6 o'clock. It is Senegal versus Netherlands. Watch our African buggers. We can't watch South Africa because we know that we're not going to make a World Cup. But yeah, I'd appreciate you guys to support later. We're also going to be doing Wales versus USA. Going to be a lot of the FIFA World Cup coverage. And yeah, all you guys' support will be really appreciated as we try and sort of build our brand, build our offering, and make what we do as good as possible to guys improve your guys' experience, basically. So hopefully I'll see you guys later. If not, we'll see you guys tomorrow at 2 o'clock for the Springbok team announcement. We will have a Springbok press conference that'll be up in the next couple of hours. So it's usually Dion Davids and a player. Often that player is usually involved, so it'll be interesting to see who it is. Obviously, we've also got some URC build-up this week as well. We'll have watch-alongs that coming up as well. So it's a very busy time for a rugby fan and a cricket fan, because we've got a lot of cricket coming up, and a soccer fan, and there's a hell of a lot of golf. So we've got a lot coming to you guys. So hopefully we'll see you guys all around. Please do smash like on the way up. Please do subscribe if you're new. We are past 22,000 subscribers. Let's try and get to 23 this week, hey? Surely we could do 23,000 subscribers by the end of this weekend. And then we've got that weird 2,000 to try and get by the end of the year. Maybe we can make that happen. I mean, Happy New Year's, 25,000 subscribers. I'll be a very happy man. And the next year we double it. We go for 50. Imagine. But yeah, see you guys all soon. And thank you for joining me for